G'day everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Bitshares.tv, and today it's been a really interesting week in the world of crypto. So a world first has taken place. Somebody has been employed directly by the blockchain. So this is blockchain employing a human. This is like science fiction time. Now the machines are controlling us. Not quite, as you'll find out in a little bit, but it's a very interesting development and a really good advancement in the technology of blockchain technology. Now, later on, we're going to chat to Nikolai. He's known on the Bitshares forums as Toast, much loved on there, and he's actually that person. He's the very first person in the world to be employed by the blockchain. Now, that's really cool. We're going to get to him in a moment. To introduce this topic, I thought I need to give a little bit of background. So, remember that what Bitcoin is to currency, Bitshares is to businesses. And in order to handle that, there needed to be a few changes to the consensus algorithm and the protocol underlying it. Because the proof of work algorithm that Bitcoin uses, it does a great job for currency, but for the world of business, it was lacking in a few areas. One of those areas is that in the world of business, you have structures like you have shareholders, and those shareholders have voting rights. And those shareholders vote for a board of directors. Those board of directors hire a CEO, and the CEO hires people and upper management and all those kinds of things, right? So Bitcoin protocol had no way of handling that. So the guys at Bitshares went ahead and built that into the Bitshares protocol. There is now a method, so when you download the Bitshares client, you run the desktop client, to the degree that you own Bitshares, you can vote on certain things that happen inside Bitshares. And one of those things is to vote on what Bitshares calls delegates. Now, I'm going to do a whole other episode at a future date on the whole consensus algorithm that Bitshares uses, which is called delegated proof of stake. And don't confuse that with proof of stake, because there are some limitations to proof of stake that are well understood. Delegated proof of stake is not that, so do yourself a favor and don't dismiss it quickly if you're aware of those limitations, because delegated proof of stake has circumvented those. But it's also given us the gift of being able to vote for delegates. Now, the original use of this voting power for delegates was a mechanism to keep in check the costs of securing the network. So whereas with the Bitcoin protocol, you have the block rewards. Every 10 minutes or so, the block rewards are given to the miner who solves that block and adds it to the blockchain. And that is it's a fixed thing, and it's set. There's no competition in place to reduce that. It's just at a set price. Every 10 minutes, you're going to have a block reward of, at present, 25 Bitcoins every block. With Bitshares, what they did in the delegated proof of stake algorithm is that they had a delegate panel of 101 delegates, and only those 101 delegates have the privilege of being able to create blocks. And so what the community does is they vote on who is going to be those delegates who can create blocks. Now, here's something the really cool part that comes out of that. In the Bitshares community, already there are over 1,000 delegates. People have known and said, yes, I want the privilege of being a delegate. I want to be able to create blocks. Now, what they've done is they've actually bid down their price. So the delegates are all saying, hey, vote for me, I want to produce blocks. So what they do is they actually lower their pay rate. They don't accept the full block reward. And by lowering their pay rate, people say, well, I'm going to vote for you because you're costing the network less in order to secure the network. So the average figure right now is, up until a week ago, pretty much all of the delegates were only accepting 3% of the block rewards. 97% of the block rewards they were burning, and which is just like giving it back to the network. And so what that did, that allowed them to have to meet their costs of running the hardware, running the electricity cost of creating blocks, and left a small profit over to the market forces, drove those prices down to where there's just a little bit of profit left in it for the delegates. But here's something interesting that came about, and this was all planned for, of course. What some delegates have done is you said, you know what, I'm not going to just create blocks just like the normal delegate. I'm actually going to go ahead and do something really valuable for the entire Bitshares ecosystem. And I want you guys to pay me a salary. I want to get more than the normal delegate gets, because I'm going to add value. Maybe I'm a core developer. Maybe I'm producing code. Maybe I'm a marketing consultant or a legal consultant or a spokesperson, or all these different types of jobs that a typical business would have. And this is important infrastructure as we think of blockchain moving into other areas of the ecosystem and knocking out more businesses. I say knocking out, let's say making other businesses more efficient. This is important infrastructure, how blockchains can employ people. And so I think that's a little bit of enough of a background to where we've come to this point where we're now going to meet Nikolai, who he was that very first person who said, you know what, I want 100% of the block rewards, but in order for you to vote for me, I realize that I've got to give you something extra, and I'm going to be a core developer. And so let's find out a little bit more about that. Nikolai, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
That's awesome, man. Nikolai, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Because you were not just brand new to Bitshares. You've been around for a while. You worked with the Bitshares core development team for a long time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you first came across Bitshares and why you're interested in Bitshares at all? Why did it appeal to you?
Sure. So I was researching next generation applications of blockchain technology about a year ago, maybe a little less, while I was still in college, my senior year. And I came across Bitshares, which actually didn't exist at the time. There was only ProtoShares and the other, the movement behind it, but the actual technology didn't exist yet. But I realized at the time that that's sort of the killer app. I mean, even if of all the different applications that you can think of, or even if you're using like a general purpose environment, like what Ethereum is trying to do, there's still only a couple of blockchain applications. So there's a couple of low-hanging fruit that are really valuable, I think, and having assets that are stable in value and or that track external asset prices, I think is a really killer app. And so that's what got me into BitShares to begin with. And then that was just a rabbit hole. Once I learned what these guys were doing and what their philosophy is and their approach to the whole problem into the space, I got hooked.
So the astute viewer will notice that Nikolai's just taken his jacket off. Hopefully that helps with the sound quality. So Nikolai, you raised an interesting point. You said that your philosophy was aligned with Bitshares. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What is Bitshares' philosophy? What's your philosophy that worked out well?
Sure, I really like that. So the thing about Bitshares is that the guys, they admit economic realities and they focus around not being wasteful and making sure that everything you're doing makes economic sense, but also doing that without compromising on the ideals that most people in the Bitcoin space are interested in Bitcoin for, which is like freedom, personal liberty, privacy, whatever. I'm sure you can, the list yourself, but all those things, believe it or not, people at BitShares are extremely enthusiastic about all of those. And whenever we talk about profit or we talk about making economic sense, it's to help those goals, it's to work toward those goals. It's because we think that the current systems aren't accomplishing those goals quickly enough because they aren't looking at the economic reality.
Right. So now we can talk about, because there was originally, there was a donation period where a lot of people got behind this idea about BitShares. In fact, there was a lot of money donated to the developers to just hopefully to get this vision up and running. And that's happened, and those funds are kind of coming to an end, but there's still a little bit of time left with those. But it was kind of that in particular which kind of led to this idea of this self-funding blockchain, whereby the unit holders of the blockchain, they can actually vote for people and can start paying them through the inflation mechanism of the blockchain to actually pay them to develop it. And I think that's a model that we're going to see in lots of other places with lots of other blockchains in the near future. I think they'll copy and emulate that. But let's talk about now, so you went through that process. You actually worked for a long time as a core developer, and you have a really good reputation with the BitShares community. You contributed a lot. So now we go into the process of like, okay, now I want to be a paid delegate now that and this is like a brand new thing, right? So explain that process of how you went about getting yourself nominated.
Sure, so it was pretty simple. In my case, it was unusual because I was already a developer for a long time, so all I really had to do was ask. I said, hey, my paycheck is coming to an end. I still want to work on this. Vote me in so I can get paid by the DAC, and that's sort of the process. That's the process everyone has to do to get voted in. Is they have to come to the shareholders and make a pitch, sort of, say, here's what value I'm going to add. Please vote me in.
Right.
So in my case, I already had the several months of working as a core developer, and so I already had high approval.
Right. And I think that's a really important point to make. And maybe you can just brainstorm with me here a little bit about how, because this is brand new, right? The world's never seen people being employed directly by the blockchain. Let's talk about a little bit about how that might go down. You were the first instance of that. And like you said, you've established a long credibility and history with the BitShares community. But I think in the future, it can go down a few different ways. And one way I see is that people can enter the space with an enormous amount of credibility and established track record already. So I could see that someone like, let's say in the tech field, like let's say somebody like a Mike Hearn or someone like a Gavin Andreessen said, hey guys, I'm really passionate about this project. I think it's going to help the whole cryptocurrency community. It's going to help Bitcoin. It's going to help BitShares. It's going to help freedom around the world. I want to be involved. I want to come and work with this. I can't give up my job over there until I'm a delegate here. can you please go ahead and vote me in as delegate? And they might become I can see that the community might, for that kind of brand name with established trust and reputation, the community might go ahead and vote for that person without any work done in advance. And that's on the technology front. On the non-technology front, I can see people like maybe Barry Silbert or Andreas Antonopoulos. They might come forward and say the same things. I'm passionate about this project. I want to help it grow. Consider giving me a delegate position as well. And I think in the rare limited instances where someone has established trust, they may be able to just go straight into a paid delegate position. But I think for the majority of people, I think it's going to be more like the path that you took. It's going to be like, let me establish a history. Let me give to the community. Once I've done that, once you see my value, consider giving me a salary so that I can do this full time and give away any other projects. And then, I mean, even I haven't thought about this specifically, but maybe in a month or two after, Bitshares TV is, raging success, hopefully, and it's really helping the community, it's helping bring people together, it's helping share the vision. Maybe the blockchain may in the future offer, myself a paid delegate position. We'll have to wait and see. And there's lots of other people doing similar things. On the technology front, I think if you are a coder out there without an established reputation, then I think it might be more prudent for you to come in and actually do something. It's like contribute, make some applications, make some useful tools, maybe even do some mock-ups and say, hey community, here is what I have built so far, or here's what I'm going to build. Here are the mock-ups, consider giving me a delegate. Is that the kind of thing that you see going forth? And can you think of any other instances of what the community would need in order to vote for somebody?
Sure, yeah. So you're definitely right that in most of the time, you're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to show the stakeholders a little teaser of what kind of value you can add before you can get voted in. One important reason for this is that there's absolutely no contracts involved anywhere here. It's all voluntary interactions. And so because of that, there's no way for the shareholders to keep someone accountable. So if they claim that they're going to do something and then they don't, well, you're out the paycheck that you paid them during the time that they claimed they would do something. Of course, you can vote them out instantly, but the shareholders need some assurance that you actually can deliver. And so yeah, that's mostly what we've seen is people first give a little sample of their work, say, hey, if you vote me in, I'll continue doing this. And that's also a form of protection actually for the employee because if the shareholders suddenly decide to fire him, he needs something to take away, to threaten, hey, if you fire me, I'll stop doing this work.
Yeah, good point. That is a good way for the employee to protect themselves because this is an interesting instance. Like this is brand new stuff, and it's not like like some major company advertising for positions. Hey, we're hiring a developer today, and you go and do an interview, and they're going to hire one person. With blockchain technology, you basically have to inspire the shareholders or the unit holders of Bitshares to go ahead and vote. Now, voting is super simple. You have it in your client. You just click, vote this person, and then upload that vote into the blockchain, and it's recorded. It's very, very simple to do. But still, in order for someone to go ahead and do that, they've really got to be inspired and think that you're going to add a lot of value. So the different ways in which people can demonstrate that is going to be really interesting. Some other examples I've just been brainstorming that I think might come to fruition is I could even see it almost being like a seed funding for a startup. So let's say you have a great idea. You want to build like an on-ramp or an off-ramp, between fiat and Bitshares. Or let's say you want to create a wallet. You want to be the blockchain.info of Bitshares, or you want to be the Coinbase or Circle of Bitshares. Well, you can go ahead and say, hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and build this, or I've started building this. Please give me, vote me as a delegate. You can start earning income as a delegate, even though you're building your own business. So that's a really interesting concept. Another concept I thought of is people who have already built infrastructure for other blockchains, Bitcoin being the most obvious example. If you've already built, a wallet for Bitcoin, it would be a very small adjustment to make that a wallet, a mobile wallet, let's say, from Bitshares. And you can go ahead and approach the community and say, hey, vote me as a delegate. Lots of different ideas here. It's really very much, it's the creativity, so the possibilities are only limited by the creativity of people who are willing to go and do this. So why don't we talk a little bit now about what people are actually earning as being a 100% paid delegate. Do you know the numbers at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's something between $2,000 and $3,000 a month at the current market cap. So you're paid in Bitshares, and so obviously, like the higher the market cap, the higher your salary. Currently, it's $2,000, $3,000 a month. we're shooting to quadruple the market cap so that we can sustain a full-time job for developers uh, just from one delegate seat. One thing I want to say before we go on is that you said that you have to inspire shareholders to vote for you. It's not just, you can't. Uh, One important thing to keep in mind is that the voting mechanism is called approval voting, which basically means that each delegate has an independent election where every single share votes yes or no, which means to get in, it takes much more than just knowing a rich shareholder. You really have to get the majority of shareholders to see the value. So the lowest approval delegate that's voted in has much more votes than the highest individual stakeholder.
Right. Yeah, and that is a really good point, because otherwise you get yourself into a very centralized location where you're basically applying to one person. Can I please have this job? But because of the distribution of the coins, that might be another episode too, the distribution of Bitshares. But because of that distribution, that's not really the case. It's a really good point. With regards to the currency, I think you made a really good point there. Right now, the income is, if you secured a delegate position, you'd be earning around $2,000 or $3,000 per month. But I think there's another important aspect here, which is the growth of Bitshares. So we know that in the next month or two, there's some really significant releases coming through Bitshares. They're going to release the 1.0 client. A little bit of history here for everybody. This is a brand new concept. Applying the blockchain technology to Bitshares. Bitshares is a leader in the industry, and as it goes along, it learns a lot, and it needs to change quickly. And so there's been a number of hard forks throughout the history of Bitshares. And obviously, it's almost like it's a necessary component, but the consequence of that is it's very difficult for partners to join Bitshares and start, like for example, major exchanges and so forth, to partner with Bitshares and allow the on and off ramps with that. It's very difficult for them because they're constantly doing updates every time there's a hard fork. And so we find ourselves coming to the end of a little bit of a milestone, and the protocol 1.0 is due to be released in the next month or two. And that's going to be a really significant event, because that will basically be, okay, we now have a functioning, working, stable protocol. All the proof of work stuff has been done over the last 6 months, and people can comfortably and reliably integrate with Bitshares, and they know that they're not going to have engineering headaches by hard forking every single month. So that's going to be a really big thing coming up in the next month or two. And I think as a result of that, we'll probably see a significant increase in the Bitshares price. Step two from that is, once that happens, you now have these on-off ramps coming on. You now have mobile wallets coming on. You now have all these different infrastructure points coming on. And I think it's going to see a very quick rise in market cap. No guarantees, no promises. Don't put next month's rent on that. But I think we're going to see that in the next month or two, certainly by let's say, March or so of 2015, which the result will be these delegate positions become very, very valuable. And it could even be the point where a single delegate position is making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per year. Now, let's talk a little bit about where this might go in the future. So, I think the community would probably be pretty upset paying a core developer $5 million per year, which is entirely possible that's where it gets to. How do you think the evolution of this will go, and how do you see delegate positions and salary people taking place in the future?
Sure. So I think probably what's going to happen is you're going to have a delegate seat is going to belong to an organization, not to an individual, and that organization is going to absorb the volatility and pay a developer a normal salary. You won't have the case that I don't actually know what my dollar value salary is because it's highly volatile. I don't think that's going to happen. That's going to be the case for too much longer. I think you're going to have in one organization paying multiple people one delegate is almost like a company, like a partner that's working with Bitshares more than an employee, I would say.
Right, I can see that kind of happening. So that'd almost be like a core development team delegate, and they might employ half a dozen, 2 dozen developers just on that. There might be a marketing delegate, and they might have to distribute all those funds amongst a number of different people. And so that's a really interesting thing. I think that'll be interesting to watch how that pans out.
By the way, Max, I want us to go back to talk about how you mentioned that we're approaching protocol version 1. And by the way, 1.0 means protocol version 1. It doesn't mean that the user experience is going to be 1.0 quality for a little while longer. But an important consequence of that is that all these infrastructure, or we call them infrastructure, but all these external services that interact with Bitcoin can now, with confidence, start, just do a little one little change and make it work with Bitshares, especially if you already have experience making your service work with multiple altcoins. It's very, very little marginal effort to add Bitshares to as something that you support. But on the other hand, in return, what you can do is you can get a delegate seat. You can say, hey, we want to make this, we want to make a new tipping bot, for example. We've already have experience writing tipping bots for a couple of different altcoins. Can you give us a delegate seat just to give us a little boost? Now, we won't be, you can't expect shareholders to vote in delegates for all companies that work with Bitshares, especially since those external infrastructure projects are supposed to be profitable on their own. And then if they're not, we shouldn't be supporting them. But it's sort of like if you need a little bit of seed money to get your service up and running. Yeah. That's something that we can start realistically doing the next month or two. But up till now, we can't really expect developers to tolerate constant hard forks. But that's going to come to an end soon.
Yeah, and that's all really good points. Let's talk a little bit about the specific projects. I know there's a couple of there's already a couple of developers in the wings who are looking at becoming delegates on the back of some projects that they're looking to build. What are some of the projects that you think the community are really yearning for at the moment? It's like if someone came forward and offered this promise, then it's very likely they'd achieve a delegate position.
I'd say the top two most important things we need right now are on and off ramps and mobile wallets / thin clients. We have groups of developers that have already approached us to do both, but neither of those things are done yet, and we probably need more than one of each. So that's something that is practically guaranteed to get you in. And then something that is just a nice to have, but it's still nice to have is like I mentioned before, a tipping bot or a hosted wallet and basically anything you can think of that makes Bitcoin easier to use can probably be adapted also.
Yeah, really good points. I can even see there's the potential there for someone to just go ahead and become, what would you say? I would argue like a professional bounty hunter. It's like, as these projects just come up, I'm just going to save the Bitshares that I'm receiving as the block rewards, and then I'm going to save them up and say, okay, I'm going to put a $3,000 bounty out there for someone to create X. So it might even be a delegate might take a position that isn't even actually a content creator or a code creator themselves, but they just merely facilitate the bounty hunting, I guess, for projects like that. That's another way this could go down. It really, like I said, it really is limited to the creativity of delegates because there are so many different ways in which they can do that. So, Nikolai, if there are people out there who are interested in becoming a delegate, what would be their next steps?
Well, at this point, since the system is still very young and the community is pretty small, the right thing to do is probably just go straight to the forum and make a pitch there.
Yeah, so that's bitsharestalk.org.
Yeah, and you should go there anyway just to get involved because it's awesome. But that's where you should go if you want to be a delegate, if you have some value to add. I think probably in the future there might be more process to it. It might be less ad hoc and just less informal. But right now, that's really all it takes is just convince the people that have the Bitshares that you're going to add value.
Yeah, and it is, A, it's a very friendly community. B, the kind of ideas that are floating around there are excellent. And C, it's a really good place to literally be a sounding board. It's like you might think that you have an idea or a project that will really help the Bitshares community, but maybe the Bitshares community doesn't think so. And so you can go there and hash out your ideas and actually ask what it is they want and really put yourself in a position where you're really going to know what they want, you'll be able to deliver it, and it'll be a win-win on both sides. I do want to talk a little bit about the concept of, you mentioned earlier, there are no employment contracts. There's a lot of uncertainty for the employee side in this as well. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about that and some of the legalities of such a thing?
Yeah, well, so the elections inside Bitshares are continuous, or rather every 10 seconds they're updated, so it's practically continuous. So an employee has no guarantee that they're going to keep their job. An employee has no severance package or anything like that. It's really at the whim of just a large decentralized group. It's almost like an emergent consensus that doesn't really represent any individuals. And so they don't have a lot of the guarantees that you would expect as an employee from your employer. And because of that, I would say it's a lot riskier. As far as legalities go, it's complicated. No one really knows what this is, but so far, the consensus seems to be that you should treat it as if you're an independent contractor and just its normal income, the dollar value of the Bitshares on the day you receive them.
Yeah. It is. I mean, where I guess each individual would presumably pay um, income tax on the bit shares they receive, whatever jurisdiction that is. But with regards to the jurisdiction by which there is employment law, to me, I would imagine that's pretty similar to, like, I mean, I have some employees in the Philippines and Lithuania and a few other places around the world. In those instances, there really is no employment law for us to deal with. It's just they're independent contractors. We give them projects. We choose to give them regular income, and they choose to do regular projects for us. It's kind of like that. So in that sense, the blockchain becomes sovereign. It's almost like a separate country itself, and the jurisdiction is really the contracts of the blockchain, which is kind of, there is a lot of certainty in that too. So you absolutely know with 100% certainty that the blockchain will execute your pay on time. Yeah, that's a guarantee. So that's kind of cool. It's just as long as you continue to work for the community and they find value in it, and that's cool. We can go into a little bit of a conversation here. Those well-versed in Austrian economics will probably recognize already the incredible advantages in terms of efficiency to the workplace. We sadly have a culture here around the world, actually, where most people think that it's the government or unions or whatever it is that protect workers. And it's actually not. What does protect workers and gives them a high standard of living, gives them good conditions, is actually a thriving economy and lots of different options to be employed. So that you've got lots of employers trying to poach you and win you over with a higher quality of benefits and a higher quality of pay and higher quality of conditions. And that really, at the end of the day, is what keeps employees in a high standard of living and the workforce in a good condition. Cool. Well, Nikolai, why don't we go ahead and leave it there? Thank you very much for joining us. It's much appreciated. Hopefully we'll get a chance to speak in the future.
Great. Thank you.
Well, guys, that's it for episode 2 of Bitshares.tv. I'm not sure if by the time you get to watch this, my book, Bitshares 101, will be released. If it is, you'll probably see a link below. Feel free to go ahead and download that. The PDF copy is free, or you can get it on Kindle or the hard copy if you choose. And if it's not available, probably somewhere on the screen, if you're at bitshares.tv, there'll be a place where you can enter in your email address and I can shoot you updates of when the book is released. I can also let you know that when the next episode is out. So go ahead and do that now. It's been a pleasure, Nikolai. Thank you once again, and we'll see you soon.